Hi everyone, it's Lisa. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, thanks for joining me. In today's video, I'm going to be making 10 cards with the Stamps of Life Trendy Twig kit. But before we get started with this card tutorial, if you're not already a subscriber, go ahead and click that subscribe button and turn on your bell notification so that you'll be notified every time I release a new video. So this kit from the Stamps of Life is called Trendy Twig, and it comes with all of the fun goodies that you see here, and I'll go into each one more detailed in just a minute. But I also want to mention it does also come with the brand new twig colored ink, which I do not have shown here because I have not received it yet from the Stamps of Life. So just know that when you receive your kit, it will come with the twig ink. Now, this kit comes with these flourish stamps. There are 4 of them, including the matching dies with the shadows. It also comes with this fun paper pad, which includes several fun die cut pages, which one of them includes the llamas from the Llama to Stamp set. So you can actually use your shadow dies if you have those dies to cut those out. It also includes a couple of pages of these turtles, which will correspond with the tortie to stamp and the more torties to stamp. There are a few pages of these picnic baskets, which correspond with the picnic to stamp die set, as well as these watering cans, which coordinate with the garden to stamp dies. And you get all these flowers and checkerboard patterns in addition to these fun die cut pieces. The wreaths coordinate with the wreath to stamp die set, and then the birdhouses correspond with the birdhouses to stamp dies. Now, if you don't have the dies, you can always use your scissors and fussy cut these out of your paper pad. So you get 24 sheets. Each page is double-sided, so you get 2 pages of each one. You also get the 5 petal flower stencil, as well as some epoxy dots, and you also get 2 ribbon and these felt bows and all of these die cut pieces. Now, these are not the die cuts from the paper pad. This is an extra set of die cuts that you get included with this kit. So you get so many of these fun die cuts to make cute cards. And again, these die cuts, I mean, look how many that you get. So if you had the dies, or if you wanted to fussy cut out additional ones from the paper pad, you can. Or you can just use all of the opposite pages in the paper pad with the fun patterns and just use the die cuts that you see here to make your cards. But you get so many birdhouses, flowers, the wreaths, the baskets, the turtles, the watering cans. You get an apple pie, some llamas, so there's a lot of die cuts here to make quick cards. So for this first card, I am using the dies that correspond with the Picnic to Stamp set. And that die set has this, it's like a tablecloth die, and I die cut that out of this red and white checkerboard print, and I layered that onto a flowered print, and that is cut with a scalloped rectangle die. And I'm just going to use the basket, the apple pie, I'm using the turtle, and just gonna be kind of putting those on the picnic basket. I am using one of the flourishes. It's the one with the flower in the middle, which I die cut out of just some white cardstock. And I'm just using the die there. And I did put double-sided adhesive on the back of that because it's awfully thin, and I didn't want to try to attempt to put adhesive on the back of that after running that through my die cut machine. So I'm just going to add that there to the top of that layer just for some decoration. That stamp, Relax and Enjoy the Day, is from the Picnic to Stamp set. So if you have any of these stamps and dies in your collection, you can use this video and my cards as inspiration for using your stamps and dies. And if you need more ideas on using these sets after watching this video, I have other videos on my YouTube channel where I've made cards using the birdhouses, using the turtles, and I will link all that down below so you can go down and watch those videos and get more inspiration and more card ideas. So that layer was just added to a piece of strawberry cardstock from my stash. It measures 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and then that entire layer is put onto an A2 size card base in white. So for card 2, I am going to be bringing in some other fun dies, such as the fence die from the Stamps of Life, which I die cut out of white cardstock, and I'm just adding some cloud ink so I can just add some dimension there to that fence. I also brought in the border die set and die cut a hill border out of that green flowered paper, as well as a grass border out of the kiwi cardstock. I did ink up the edges of those with the kiwi ink, and then this little bird stand comes from the birdhouses to stamp dies, and if you don't happen to have those dies, you can just cut a thin piece of cardstock just to create your stand. The top part you're really not going to see because it's going to be covered by the birdhouses anyway, so by just cutting a thin piece of cardstock will do the same thing. And that was cut out of the ginger snap cardstock and inked up with chocolate ink. And then I'm going to add a couple of these birdhouses to the tops of these stands. They are going to be tucked behind the hillside border. So to keep them in the position that I wanted them in, I just thought it was easier just to add them with a piece of double-sided tape just to keep them in place, and then apply glue to the back side, and then just tear off the backing of the double-sided tape and add the hillside border. That way I can be sure that they're the right height that I need for my card. So I'm just going to add some glue to the back of the border and add that to the card front. And it will extend off the sides, which is no big deal because I'll just use my scissors and trim off the excess. And then I'm going to add the birdhouses to the top of each one of the stands. So I'm just going to apply some liquid glue to the back. Now I do want to mention that, as I said earlier, that this kit will also come with the twig ink, and then obviously that is a new ink and a new color to the Stamps of Life. So this pad, this paper pad, includes twig, the twig color in the papers. And I didn't have any of that when I made these cards, but I do want to also mention that the Stamps of Life will be selling the new twig cardstock when they release this kit. So if you're interested in that, you can go pick up that color. So here I'm just adding glue to the back of the fence and then adding it there to the front of the hillside border. And then I'm going to add glue to the back of the grass, and I'm going to add that grass to the very bottom of that fence. And I also want to mention that I will have a coordinating blog post for this video. So all of the cards and all of the dimensions and links to the supplies will also be listed there. So I'm going to take some of the smaller flowers that were in the kit, and these actually correspond to the wreath set, but I'm going to use the smaller ones here. Just adding some glue and adding them to the card front. I'm going to bring in the watering can, and I'm going to add glue to that and then add that to the fence. And then I'm going to bring in my green apple ink, and I'm going to stamp out the sentiment, just a note, and that's going to go on a stitched oval. And that sentiment is from the Birdhouses to stamp set. So I stamped that on a white stitched oval and then backed it up on a little bit larger stitched oval that's die cut out of the cherry cardstock. And then that entire layer is put on a piece of cherry cardstock that measures 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and then that's put on a white A2 size card base. And that completes that card. For this next card, I'm using 2 of the stitched rectangle dies, and I die cut a piece of lemonade cardstock as well as the pink checkerboard paper from the paper pad. If you don't have stitched rectangle dies, you can cut with your paper trimmer. The yellow paper is 4 by 5. The pattern paper is 4 7/8 by 3 1/2. I am bringing in the wreath as well as a birdhouse. I do cut a piece of twine, and I'm using a glue dot to adhere it to the back of the birdhouse. And then I'm going to add the birdhouse to the middle of the wreath. And the birdhouse that I chose is a little bit larger than I would have liked to fit in this wreath, so you really can't see much of the twine. If you use a smaller birdhouse, the twine will be able to, you'll be able to see it much better. So part of me says I don't even know why I put twine on here because you can't even really see it. But nonetheless, I did that, and I'm going to go ahead and add glue to the back of the birdhouse, add it there to the card front, and then I'm going to add the wreath. Now I want you to keep in mind that these die cut pieces that I'm using are all part of the ephemera pack that was included in this kit. I have not and will not be using any of the pieces from the paper pad with the exception of one llama, which you'll see later on. I think it's probably the last card I do, where I die cut a llama out of the paper pad. But other than that, I'm just using the pattern paper out of the pad and all of the ephemera pieces. So I go ahead and add a couple of the small flowers to the wreath. I do use the felt bow, and I'm going to add that to the top with some hot glue, but I'll do that at the end. I am using a thanks so much sentiment. It's a word die, and this word die is from one of the Stamps of Life card kits. I don't know which kit it was from, but I had it in my stash and I thought it would be perfect for this card. So I cut out the shadow in white and then the words in the ginger snap. Here I'm putting the hot glue on the top of the wreath. And that entire card layer will go on a piece of the craft cardstock. Now, this is just some craft cardstock that I had in my stash, but you can definitely use the ginger snap cardstock from the Stamps of Life, and that was just an A2 size card base. So for this next card, I have several pieces. I die cut a large circle. That's approximately a 4¼ inch circle. And then that strip of pattern paper is 5¼ by 1. I have that polka dot paper, which is 5¼ by 4. The craft paper is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. And that is a white A2 size card base. I also have these scalloped borders. I cut 2 of those out of some white cardstock, and that die came from a previous Stamps of Life card kit. So here I'm just going to layer everything out. Now I do want to mention you saw me inking up the edges. So all the papers except for the card base I did ink up with my ginger snap ink. So everything here has a little bit of a brown tone to the edges of the cardstock. So here I'm just layering up the flower pattern paper horizontally across the card. I'm going to add the large circle off to the right, and it's going to hang off the edge. I'm just marking there with a pencil so that I know where I'm going to add that circle to the card, and then I'm just going to cut off the excess. So just trim off all 3 sides, and then I'm just going to erase that pencil mark, and then I'm just going to add more ink to the top and bottom edge and that side edge just from where I trimmed off that extra cardstock. So I'm just going to add glue and add that to a piece of craft cardstock, and that craft cardstock measures 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and I'm using the llama and the wreath from the ephemera pack, and I decide that I'm going to kind of tuck that wreath between the llama's legs. I did put some glue dots on the back of the llama where it connects to the wreath just to kind of keep it in place, and then I add it to my card. And I just want to mention that if you notice the polka dot pattern paper and then the polka dot in the saddle, that's why I chose to use that polka dot pattern paper, because it matched that llama perfectly. So the stamp for the front of the card was the Hey Mama Llama, and that's from the Llama to Stamp set. And then the stamp for the inside, Happy Birthday, is from the Garden to Stamp set. And then I just add that extra saddle with some foam to pop that up. And I'm just going to add a strip of this polka dot cardstock to the inside just to add just some more color to the inside. That completes this card, and for my next card I am going to be bringing in some of the dies from the Picnic to Stamp die set. So I have the lemonade as well as the watermelon slice, and I'm sorry some of this is off camera, but I went ahead and die cut the lemonade glass out of the lemonade cardstock from the Stamps of Life, and I did ink up the edges with the lemonade ink. And then the watermelon slice, the shadow is on the black cardstock, the bottom portion is on the cherry cardstock, and then I used the green apple for the top portion of that watermelon. I am using some of the grass dies from the rounded corner step up card base, and I die cut 2 of the grass dies. I really like the grass set that's in that card base just because the grass is much fuller than the one that's in the border set, but there is a grass die that the Stamps of Life sells that is a separate standalone die that has a much fuller look to it. So if you just wanted one grass die, there is a die set on their website. You can just do a search for grass die on there and it should pop up. So here I'm just going to add some of the pieces to the basket. So the watermelon and the lemonade were die cuts that I created on my own using the picnic to stamp die set, and then that basket is one of the ephemera pieces. So I'm just going to tuck that in between the 2 layers of grass. And I'm also going to include the ants. These ants were part of the ephemera pack. There's also an ant die in the picnic basket die set. So I'm just going to add those to the grass, and it's going to look like those ants are carrying the watermelon away from the basket. And I am going to pop that one piece up on some foam. It's going to add a little bit of dimension there. I just love the way that this scene is going to turn out. I think it's so cute. So I did stamp out It's a Picnic Party. That's from the Picnic to Stamp stamp set. I stamped it out on white and then added some of the cherry ink around the edges and then backed that up on some black cardstock. And here I have several layers. So that entire card layer is going to go on a piece of black cardstock that measures 5 1/4 by 4, and then that's going to go on the cherry layer, which is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and that will go on a white A2 size card base. All of these measurements will be in my blog, so you can look down in the description box and you'll find the link to my corresponding blog post, so you can check that out if you are recreating this card. For card 6, I am going to be using the Elegant Edge A2 size card die set from the Stamps of Life. I die cut the large card base out of just some craft cardstock in my stash. You could also use the Ginger Snap cardstock from the Stamps of Life. It's a very similar color. And I cut out the card front. That is a layering die in the set out of the pattern paper that you see there. And I am going to use the flourish with the bow, and that flourish with the bow actually fits the felt bow that came with the kit. So I'm just going to add that there with some hot glue in the middle. The thank you word die is a die that's included in the Elegant Edge die set, and then that cardstock is the poppy cardstock from the Stamps of Life, and that completes this card. For my next card, I'm going to be bringing in the Phrases for Stephanie stamp set, and I love the stamp set because some of the sentiments on there are so large. You really don't need to add much else to a card front because the sentiment says it all. So I added the word thanks in some black ink, and then I die cut 2 of the flourishes out of some grape cardstock, which is the purple cardstock. It's a deeper purple cardstock from the Stamps of Life, and that layer will go on a piece of Sunshine cardstock, which is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and then that entire layer will go on a grape A2 size card base. And then I'm just going to finish this off by just adding some Crystal Nouveau drops, and the color I'm using is the Dandelion Yellow, and I add those to the petals. And then for the center, I'm using the Crystal Nouveau drops in the Ivory Seashell, and that completes that card. For my next card, I'm using the small scalloped A2 size card die set from the Stamps of Life, and I die cut the large card base out of some craft cardstock, and then some of the layering dies, I have the candy cardstock and then just the white powdered sugar cardstock for the top. I am taking the top layer, which has the scallops on the edges. I am going to be using a stencil, so I'm just going to adhere it to my glass mat. I'm putting some washi tape over just all of the edges because I don't want to get any of the stencil over top of the scalloped border, so I'm just covering that up with the washi tape. I did use some pixie spray, which I showed that there real quick. The pixie spray I just sprayed to the back of the stencil, and then it adheres the stencil to the cardstock, and you actually don't even need to add tape to hold that down to your glass mat. So I added that with some candy ink. Now I'm just carefully removing the washi tape, and now I have my pretty card front. So you can use pattern paper for this, or here I chose to use the stencil to create my own. And then I'm just adding those layers together. I am bringing in some of the ribbon from the kit, and I'm adding some score tape to the back of the ribbon because I'm going to attach it to the front of this card front, and then I'm just going to tuck the sides behind that panel and then I'm going to add the llama right there on top. I am going to be bringing in 3 of the flowers. Again, these are all of the ephemera pieces. I have not used any of the die cuts from the paper pad yet. These are all ephemera pieces. So I am going to be tying a bow, but before I add that bow, I just wanted to make sure I had everything in position so I knew where to stamp my sentiment. I llama you. So that is from the coordinating stamp set for the llama to stamp. So here I'm just gluing the pieces on. So the 3 flowers, that 3rd flower, the blue one, I do pop up on some double-sided adhesive foam, as well as the saddle for the llama. I put that on some double-sided adhesive foam, and then I'm going to add that entire layer to the card base, add some hot glue to the center of the bow, and then add that there to the front of the card. I love how this card turned out. I think it's so pretty. And that completes this card. For card 9, this is the card that I'm going to use my llama shadow die and die cut one of the llamas out of the pattern paper as well as the saddle. And the reason why I chose to use this particular llama is because I wanted the llama in the brown color, and the only llama that I had left in the ephemera was one in the gray color. I'm using the center step card from the Stamps of Life, and this layering piece I'm just cutting off the bottom because I don't need that bottom. I just want the top rectangle. The card base was just cut out of some craft cardstock, and I'm just folding it here at the score lines to actually fold the card base so that it stands. And this die set does come with some of the layering dies, which I die cut out of the pattern paper that you see there. So I'm layering up the polka dots on the sides, and then the blue floral paper will go there in the middle. Now, if you wanted to keep the bottom, you could, but I'm going to be adding a flourish with a shadow layer to the bottom, and I didn't want the pattern paper showing below the shadow die. So I die cut the shadow out of white and then the layering piece out of the cherry cardstock. And here I'm going to be using a stamp I llama you, and I don't want it to be horizontal. Instead, I want it to be a vertical stamp with each one of the words on a separate line. So I was using some washi tape just to mask off the words on the stamp and then applying the ink. So you can see here I'm just adding some washi tape, adding the ink to the letter I, removing the washi tape, and then stamping down on the paper. And then I'm going to clean that off, do the same thing, add some washi tape to part of the stamp, add some ink, remove the washi tape, and then add the word you. So then I'm just going to trim down with my scissors to create a square, and then I'm going to add some cherry ink to the edges. And I have a scarf die that's part of the llama dies, which I die cut out of the same polka dot paper that matches the saddle, and I'm going to add that scarf to the llama. I'm going to add some of the brown ribbon around the middle portion of the card base and tie that in a bow, and I'll be snipping off the edges. I'm going to add some glue dots underneath that ribbon just to keep it down on the front of that card. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my llama. I'm only putting glue on part of the llama because part of it's going to be extending off the front of the card. I am going to tuck his feet behind that flourish border. I just was positioning everything where I wanted it to go before I fully adhered it. Adding the border to the card front, and then I'm going to add the sentiment there in the front. And then I'm going to add the saddle and add a few of the blue hearts because they bring out more of the blue in the pattern paper, and add some hot glue underneath the middle part of that bow just to keep it down. And that will complete this card. For my next card, I'm going to be using the Word Stand-Up card base from the Stamps of Life. And how this card base works is you have the large die, and then you have these word dies with little notches that you just connect with some washi tape into the large card base, and then you just run that through your die cut machine using whatever color cardstock you want to use. I'm using the strawberry cardstock, which is red from the Stamps of Life, and you just fold it along the score lines to create your card base. And then it also has some layering dies, which I die cut out of the pattern paper that you see here, and one of the pieces The checkerboard piece, I did stamp one of the sentiments from the Torties to Stamp set, and I'm just going to position everything where I want it on this card. The layering dies, you can either do a stitched rectangle layering die, or there's some solid ones in the set. And this card base is actually, they have it for sale on the Stamps of Life website, but they've recently had it on HSN as well. And the one on HSN comes with some more word dies, such as happy, party, celebrate, as well as the word hello. If you purchase it from the Stamps of Life website, the main card base does come with the hello word die, and then there are some add-on word dies that you can purchase as a separate purchase. And there's also some Christmas ones too that they sell on their website. So here I'm just adding some of the ephemera pieces and adding some epoxy dots, and that makes us such a cute little stand-up card, and that completes this card. So here are all the 10 cards that I created with the Trendy Twig kit from the Stamps of Life. Leave me a comment down below and let me know which card is your favorite. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more card making tutorials. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.